The modes of the mind. We run through about 4 modes or state of our mind. Right now, when you came in today, and as we're visiting, you are in what is called the beta mode. Now, the mind is incredible. Some of you are driving brand new cars. My cars are all about 20 years old, but I understand some of these new transmissions, they shift through 6 different speeds, and people don't even realize that. Your brain does the same thing. It shifts up and down, and if I were to ask you, when did you fall asleep last night, could you tell me? Anybody know when they fell asleep without using the word about? You don't know. The truth is, we don't know when we drop down into that delta mode. Now, the levels of consciousness and the levels of the mind are beta, that's fully conscious. Now, beta is also called the critical mind. Now, I might give you a clue there. Some people never get out of their critical mind, do they? Sometimes it's called the analytical mind. It can detect problems, but it can't solve them. Now, when we are in the beta mode, our mind is running at 15 to 20,000 cycles a second. That's pretty fast. And if you've ever been in an argument with your spouse, you could easily run from 20 to 40,000, or somebody else. And so our beta mode is a mode where we analyze. It's our verbal skills. It's our linear skills. It is how we figure things out, but not how we solve our problems. Now, the first level into, say, beta is math, verbal, and linear, our analytical mind. Imagination and creativity are absent. Okay? They ain't there. It's kind of like the lights are on, but nobody's home. We analyze in beta, but we find the solutions in alpha and theta. Oh, yeah. Those are cool modes. Now, people say, well, can you just stay in one mode? Yes, you could. You could veg out and stay in delta the rest of your life. I wouldn't recommend it. Now, alpha is 9 to 15 cycles a second. Alpha waves are found in highly creative, intuitive individuals that can generally solve pretty complex problems. You are in alpha if you ever get lost in a book. How many have been in a book and you hardly even knew the phone was ringing? Or maybe didn't even know. That's alpha. If you knit, if you paint, if you're a woodworker, if you're involved in concentrating in something, you are in your alpha mode. I'm going to tell you an interesting story about the alpha and the theta in just a moment. In alpha, we find creativity. We find imagination. We find relaxation and serenity. Now, when the average person is confronted with uncertainty or disappointment or a problem, the average person will reflex into stress. And when you reflex into stress, you have shut yourself off from your creative processes. And so, some of you, I've given anchors that when something heavy's coming down, you can do a certain signal and your body will have calm. And everybody knows about the 2 pilots on U.S. Air a couple years ago. Everybody said what calm men these were. Well, do anybody remember Paul Harvey? Anybody remember Paul Harvey? Do you remember? Oh, okay. I didn't know whether you were sleeping with your eyes open or what, Emmy. Paul Harvey used to do the rest of the story. Here's the rest of the story. The captain had been using hypnosis for years to become a better skeet and trap shooter. Coincidentally, the co-pilot had used it to become better in golf and to quit smoking. And so here they are flying a 375,000-pound plane, only 1,100 feet off the ground, and both engines die. And everybody said they were so calm. Took that big plane around and very carefully landed it. Their imagination and their creativity were present. They knew exactly what to do. Alpha waves result in increased learning rates and superior problem-solving ability. Some of you, I've suggested when you get your calendar out that you play the Somewhere in Time music. It'll help you to generate more alpha waves. When Michael Jordan, they were doing tests on him because he was hypnotized for years. The man that cannot miss from the foul line. When he would be they had him in a practice session and hooked up into an EEG machine. And he shot some 300 baskets in a row without missing any of them. But they said the alpha tracings on his EEG were just out of sight. When we relax, meditate, daydream, or solve problems, we're in our alpha state of mind. Okay? Those that frequently use hypnosis generate more alpha waves than those who do not. So that's why I want you to listen to your CDs. Now, when I had my cardiac arrest, and I was dead on the scene for about 8 minutes, until the helicopter got there. They didn't need two. I wasn't that heavy. Inga was able to, once we got to the hospital, when I was in a coma, she would take and repeat suggestions to me how I would recover with total recall, total memory skills. And the doctors had told her, the man you knew is gone. He will not ever be able to practice again. He'll never be able to stand up in front of a group of people, ever. His memory will probably reset every 1 to 5 minutes. He will ask you where he is and what has happened. You will tell him. You'll go out of the room. You'll come back, and he'll do it all over again. But she kept sitting there continually saying how great my mind will be, how smart I would be, how I would have no defect. Well, when Inga was in the hospital with her subarachnoid hemorrhagic stroke, I would sit by her when she'd be either asleep or in a medical coma, and I would say the same things, how she would recover without deficit. Now, the numbers on what happened to her don't look too good. It's 40 or 45% die immediately. The rest, up to 90%, have some severe to moderate brain damage. We then have the other 7% that have a small amount. Only 2% do not have any brain damage at all. So if you've wondered if, I fell asleep, is it helping me to listen to the CD? Absolutely. Because I would sit beside Inga, and one day I happened to look at the 32-lead EEG machine. She was either, at that time, in a medical coma or she was asleep. I don't know which. And I happened to look at the EEG machine. Now, the delta, the bottom waves, not much is happening ever with that. The beta was pretty well flat. And the alpha and the theta were just kind of moving along. Just, she was thinking or dreaming. I began to give her these suggestions. And the tracings just went up and down like this. And I tried to wake her. I couldn't. But the tracings went like this. I went out in the hall and I says, will you tell Dr. West, Dr. Crow would like to talk to him for a moment. I says, but don't have him come in the room. So he came and I was looking out through the curtain. And I says, Adam, I says, watch this. So we went in the room, and Inga's alpha and theta waves were once again pretty well just flat. And I started talking to her and giving her these suggestions. You will recover without deficit. You will have total cognitive skills. Your recall will be perfect. You have wisdom and judgment. And Adam watched those tracings and Dr. West, and we went out in the hallway, and he said, damn. He says, why haven't we ever done this before? He says, they hear, don't they? I says, unless they're brain dead, yeah, they're hearing it. They are. And so you cannot listen to your CDs too much. The alpha mode is where thoughts and concepts come together. It's where we have our epiphanies. Remember in the old cartoons where they'd have the bubble above and finally a light bulb would go off? That's in the alpha waves. To have permanent results, one must visualize an alpha. Visualizing in beta is only temporary at best. People talk to me about the motivational seminars. But the thing with motivational, it doesn't last long. A football team is down at the end of the first half. The coach takes them in the locker room, talks to them, gets them all pumped up, and they win the game and lose next week. Say he was only working in the beta mode. So to have permanent results, the visualization has to take place in alpha or alpha theta. Theta is 5 cycles a second to 9. It's somnambulism, deep relaxation, serenity, creativity, increased problem-solving ability. Theta and alpha, and I myself believe there's a middle one. I call it alpha theta. Who knows? When we get lost while reading a book, driving, or going for a walk, we're in alpha or theta. How many of you have I suggested that you walk? You're going to show of hands? A lot of people. And what else have I suggested you do when you walk? Buy a machine. Because you will find, when you're out walking, your ideas will come to you. They do. Because when you're walking, you're not going left, right, repeat. You're just walking. You're an automatic pilot. And so ideas will come to you. But I will tell you this. If you don't hear them there, you'll lose it. You will not remember it. There's nothing to make you remember it. Ballroom dancing, painting, knitting, playing the drums. I had a guy who was working with golf that was a drummer. And we were talking about, I says, when you're playing drums, you certainly aren't thinking about what you're going to do next, are you? I says, you just do it. Ballroom dancing is the same thing. A poor dancer is trying to dance in beta. A ballroom dancer that is good is just relaxed and is in alpha, alpha theta. In theta, we're in physical automatic pilot. When we walk, we don't think, right foot, left foot, now repeat, we just do it. Hypnosis occurs in either alpha or theta. Now, if you wonder whether you're in hypnosis, you're in alpha. But it's okay. It's just not as deep, but it's still very, very effective. Delta is deep sleep. Some people only run from beta to delta. I had a woman that ran a cosmetic firm. She come in here to lose weight. And never did lose her weight. Out of 7 sessions, she came to 3. Always had an excuse, and as some of you know, there are no excuses. I see a couple of people laughing. Someone come in, well, that. I says, that's 17. Don't you want it? No. Just say 17, and I don't have to be bored listening, and you don't have to think up some really plausible reason that you're late. But she would get up at 5:15 every morning, jump out of bed, listen to the alarm, go work out, and work intensely all day long until nighttime, in which case she and her husband would share anywhere between 3 and 4 bottles of wine. So she would go blotto and go straight down on into delta, missing those 2 incredibly wonderful theta and alpha modes. And if you want to get really sharp with yourself, make your to-do list, your task list for the next day right before you go to sleep. And then when you're having your tea or coffee in the morning, look at it. You're going to find out. You have another piece of paper. Your subconscious mind arranged it far more efficiently through the night than you ever could have done. Now, delta, REM and theta. Every 90 minutes when you're sleeping at night, you come up out of delta and go into theta. That's rapid eye movement. I've explained that to many people here. Rapid eye movement, sleep. That's where we process new data. If you bought a new computer and didn't know how it worked, you could have been studying it for 5 hours. But when you come up out of the delta into theta and go into REM sleep, you will process up to 8 hours in only 5 minutes. Is that incredible or what? And if you have a nightmare that seems to go on for how long? In a half hour or something like that? It's 3 to 17 seconds. Incredible. So it's at a really accelerated, incredible rate. Now the thing is where we process data. We can't get there on purpose except through hypnosis. And REM is the subconscious learning mind. And the only way that we can access that on purpose is through hypnosis. Hypnosis is the bridge to the subconscious mind.